Black Magic Woman podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on. We also acknowledge traditional owners of the land where you, the listener or viewer, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to our elders past and present and acknowledge that this always was Aboriginal land and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to the Black Magic Woman podcast with Mundanara Bayles.
Thank you so much for joining us for another deadly episode of the Black Magic Woman podcast. I am here in the amazing city of Brisbane, also known as Meanjin or Munganjin. But here in Brisbane, we've got Yuggera and Turrbal people, and it's kind of home, and it has been home to me for over 25 years. I actually met my husband here on Yuggera country. So living on Cubby country, here now on Yuggera country, and somebody that I met a very long time ago, and I know exactly where I met you. It was St. Joseph's Boys College in Sydney at Oxfam's International Youth Parliament, where there was 300 people from 130 countries around the world. And it was a very hard program to get into. And we were like there was a whole lot of Australians, but only 4 Indigenous Australians. That's where I first met you. And that was a long time ago.
Can I say, I'm glad I finally got here. It's been in the wings for a while. But yes, 2004 Mundanara.
Was it 2004?
It was 2004. And that conference really shaped, I think, for the next stages of my life. So very grateful to, meet people like you and others on that, but also, too, to be able to participate in something as a 19, 20-year-old to learn all those things to go on and use them in my career.
Of course. So for all of our guests that are listening and also tuning in via YouTube, can you please share with us your name, your mob, and a little bit about, where you grew up?
Josh Creamer, Kalkadoon and Waanyi. So Waanyi country for us is up around Lawn Hill National Park up there near Doomadgee in the Gulf of Carpentaria. And Kalkadoon country is around Mount Isa. And so I grew up in Mount Isa, actually. My mum, part of the Leon family, she was the youngest of 12, so big Aboriginal family like all of them.
Yeah.
I lived out in Mount Isa until I started high school, and then my mother, Sandra Creamer, who's...
Biggest shout out to you, Auntie Sandra. I will be getting you on the podcast. Every time I run into her and you, I was like, we've got to get on this podcast.
Yeah, no, you're the Black Oprah, and I want to say that online, but my mum's also a force to be reckoned with too, particularly in that international human rights space. So,
yes.
Yeah, Central Queensland, and then a bit like you, I've been down here now since I think around 2000, 2001. So a big network of friends and family here. So this place feels a bit like home too, with all the good, all the black fellas running around and doing great things.
Well, I was running into you in my old neighbourhood. We shopped at the same Kmart.
I love Kmart.
Love Kmart. Don't you worry. Cannon Hill Kmart.
Yeah, I was there this morning trying to find birthday presents for the kids' parties on the weekend.
That's us, right? Doing what we do. We're running these businesses and you're travelling around the country, trekking Mount Everest, and then we're down Kmart trying to do the things that we do as parents for our kids. So you've got an amazing wife who, if you haven't already heard Cara Cook's episode, this is not just about, First Nations peoples. I love people that have a story to tell, and you don't have to be First Nations to have an amazing story. So I think Cara kind of freaked out when I invited her on the Black Magic Woman podcast. So Cara is your beautiful wife.
Yes. So I'm really lucky. I got 3 kids, 2 of those girls who are 8 and 6. A really strong mother for my purposes, my mother, their grandmother, but then their own mother, Cara Cook, and the example that she's set as a leader in the community and law or just in philanthropy, all the things she's done. Was the local councillor in Brisbane in the Morningside area, but she's a superstar. So if you're going to make one right decision in your life, have a good partner. All the other mistakes get sort of drowned out as long as you got a person in your corner to support you.
You just need that balance as well. But to be able to raise children, and both of you are so busy, right? I don't know, like people say to me, how do you do it? And I always say, man, I've got the best husband. If he didn't quit his job and support me, then I wouldn't be able to do what I do. And he's still running around. So today I'm running back to the coast because one kid's getting ready for his birthday party and the other kid's got cricket. And he's like saying to me, look, I'm not doing cricket. I told my kid you could play any other sport. He doesn't, not cricket. So I said, I'll do the cricket and you go to the hairdresser. So usually I'll take kids to get their haircuts.
Yeah.
So he's doing that this afternoon. So there's a lot of kind of, what can you do? How can you help me? But I know that you're getting on a plane today and you're going to be there to witness history with Louise Taylor.
Yeah, so Louise Taylor being sworn in tomorrow in Canberra as the first Aboriginal woman to be a Supreme Court judge anywhere in Australia. So looking forward to jumping on the plane this afternoon to get down and see that. And one of the things about being a lawyer in my generation is there are so many firsts. Judge Jarrow, Nathan Jarrow, being appointed the first judge in Queensland's history. The District Court, Justice Lincoln Crowley being appointed the first Supreme Court judge anywhere in Australia. And now, let's not forget Tony McAvoy, everyone's...
yes, who was on this podcast as well.
Yeah, Tony McAvoy, the first Indigenous silk, so Queen's Counsel.
Yes.
And now tomorrow I want to go down and be a part of history and watch Louise Taylor being sworn in, something really special.
Oh, of course. And you know what, I always think about the platform that I have in terms of this podcast. You can now hear it on Virgin. You can also hear it on the iHeart network. And there are at least 130 Aboriginal community radio stations right across this country that could benefit from hearing these stories of our mob, because a lot of the time mainstream media don't showcase Black excellence.
It's interesting you say that. You talk about me travelling, and I've worked on the stolen wages, the stolen gen cases, so these really massive cases across Queensland, Northern Territory, WA. I've spent the last 5 or 6 years on the road. I feel a bit like a FIFO worker. I get on a plane, I travel, and I go to the most remote communities in Australia. That's my day job, right? You go to these places, you see the poverty, and for my purposes, a lot of it's been caused by legislation, by the law.
Mm-hmm. What do you say to people who still seem to think that we shouldn't complain? Where it's our fault that we're in this position, and like Tony Abbott said, well, if you live in these remote communities and you don't have access to running water, well, then that's a lifestyle choice. Yeah. Now I'm getting all fired up. How do you not get fired up?
Look, there's a few things, and I just wanted to say Queensland has passed its own Path to Treaty Act, which will have truth-telling in it and have treaty making in it. The second thing I wanted to say was that money wasn't passed down. What actually happened was you see there was a wealth shift. So basically leaving the land aside, but Aboriginal people provide, it was their land, but leaving that to one side, you see one or two, like a pastoralist, you'll see a non-Indigenous owner and you'll see a non-Indigenous manager, and that's the two people, right? And the wealth is created by this massive workforce. They build the yards. They during the mustering and the cattle, they're doing all the work. They're creating all the wealth, but it goes to the owner or the manager. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't that it wasn't being passed down; it was just actually being shifted. And so that's where the wealth is created. And it's the same, in terms of the Indigenous women. They're providing the labour force here, in across all of Australia in those days. The other point around, I don't get frustrated because I think truth-telling we're coming into the stage. And so I've had the benefit of doing that with my work now for, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. But I've been waiting for the reconciliation stage to end because it's been going for 30 plus years. Mm. And I wondered what was coming next, and truth-telling's coming next. Mm-hmm. And so there will be this period where people start to understand. I think the most important part about truth-telling is that the knowledge that comes from it is integrated into our learning. Mm-hmm. Whether that's in schools or whether that's businesses jump on, or organisations like what you're doing, Black Card. But that knowledge will be out there. And I think as society matures and we grow over the next number of decades, it should become part of everybody's understanding. That's really exciting for me, actually. So that those stories, because that generation, I think they've probably got 10 years left. Yeah, they're going to be gone in 10 years. So there's a real importance to capture those stories now, but they will be, you know, our bedrock for what the society that our next generation wants to have.
I want to be on the road listening to these stories. I'm like, so...
I record them all.
Well,
I got to sit a little DJI camera down. I got 200 video recordings.
Oh, we need a yarn, literally.
I'm going to make something out of that.
We need to yarn.
We'll do a doc. I've been waiting for ages. I want to do this Forgotten Australian story.
Okay. Don't talk to anyone else.
I got all these recordings. We're out there all the time.
All right. Well, please promise me, Josh, don't talk to anyone else.
I'll sign exclusivity contract. I'll take a card.
Yeah. Look, I just want to be part of it. And it's just so important that, you know, we are a settler society. We're a young society. We're an immature society. We still haven't really grown up in a sense when you compare us to other settler societies around the world like America and Canada and other places. For us to actually grow up, we need to start with owning the history, which is, you know, let's start with truth-telling instead of reconciliation. Should have been the other way around. When people say to me, so, okay, now, you know, because people always want to go, well, what's next? You know, I'm like, well, hold a minute. You know, we're not going to solve a 230-year-old problem tomorrow. And we're probably not going to see the change that's needed within my lifetime. So let's not think about what's next. Let's start thinking about what can I do? What can I do as an individual? What can I do as a citizen in this country? What can I do as an employee of an organisation that may have or may not have a reconciliation action plan? People ask me all the time, you know, what does justice look like? If you're saying that a truth-telling commission will lead to healing, and that's what needs to happen. Our people need to heal, and this nation needs to heal. But also, when I think of South Africa, they had truth and reconciliation, but they didn't get any justice. Yeah. Do you talk about this to...
Oh, I love these concepts. I don't get the time to talk about them all the time.
Oh, man, we got as much time as you've got.
Look, our current relationship, Indigenous Australia and non-Indigenous Australia, is defined by our history. You got to remember that, so with Terra Nullius, it wasn't that they didn't think anyone existed. It's just they thought that Indigenous people were so low on the social scale they couldn't have rights and interests, so they considered us savages and barbarians. And that's in the Mabo judgment. You should read that. But that's what Terra Nullius is actually about. It's not that we didn't exist, it's we didn't have rights and interests because we were...
I saw it as a subhuman animals.
Yeah, so we couldn't. So that's really, that relationship in a legal context stayed in place until 1991, until the Mabo decision. But I want to sort of reference separately. So you have that initial view of why you couldn't have, why we need this land and these people shouldn't have it, or they weren't people, why we're justified in taking it off them. And the other part is, how do you then justify not paying, you know, people working 18 hours a day and not paying them? The only way to justify that is to say, well, they're not as smart as us, or they don't have the same ambition, they're not capable, they shouldn't have their money. So you have all these sort of these ideas built up through our history. Aboriginal people are inferior, we can't pay them the same, they don't have the same goals as us, you know, all these types of things. And that still defines our relationship with non-Indigenous Australia on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where we got to change, right? You got to realise that, you know, those things that we carried as a nation for 220 odd years or 250 years now, were just myths. And they're myths to reinforce the fact that the British wanted the land. They're myths to reinforce the fact that we needed cheap labour, so we'll get all the blackfellas to do it and not pay them, pay them flour, sugar, tea, tobacco. But you know what? That part of history is coming to an end. And, you know, we see all these amazing blackfellas out there. One of the things I really want to do, I don't have the time to do it, maybe it's something you could do, but just the networks of black successful people, black excellence I see around Brisbane all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I want to do something for my kids' purposes, to, you know, the David Williams, the Scott Youngs, the Mundanara Bayles, like all these people, Jai Lawton, all these people out there doing great stuff. And that's what, and it's our time in a way. It's our time to drive this next stage of, you know, where the nation's going to be.
I love the fact that you mentioned, you know, all of our mob being put onto these stations or reserves, settlements, the flour, sugar and tea that was part of our rations. Uncle Archie Roach, beautiful. a man that was part of our life for a long time, Nani Ruby, sings a song, the Mission Ration Blues.
Yeah.
You know, being in Murray Radio and listening to our musicians growing up as a kid in Redfern and then with Murray Radio in Brisbane and then going to the Murray School. Like, so my upbringing and the people that I was exposed to are like the Archie Roaches and the Kev Carmodys and everyone.
Yeah.
So this black excellence, these deadly people that have been, you know, leading the way or paving the way and still doing, you know, deadly things, but this next generation, you know, I don't like, you know, when people say, oh, the middle class blacks. That's, you know, for me and for even our mob that are listening and watching this episode, you know, when we start to kind of use terminology like that, that means we're starting to operate on white terms of reference. And my Aunt Lilla, my business partner at Black Card and co-founder, my grandmother's sister, Aunt Lilla always said to me, you know, as black fellas, we need to consolidate what Aboriginal terms of reference is. No caste system, no class system, no leaders, no monarchies, no chiefs. So we've got a different culture. We didn't have a warrior culture. We didn't have a chieftain system. There's no tribalism. It's not a whole nation of tribes because we didn't have a chieftain system. So often people refer or compare, they compare us to other Indigenous groups in the world. But we stand alone for the very fact that we didn't invent a hierarchy. So for our own mob to kind of learn more about our culture and then to also strengthen their cultural identity, I'm hoping that more people come to Black Card and hear about our culture from a strength base. And when people listen to this podcast, I hope that they walk away feeling, you know, inspired or motivated or feeling really deadly that they also belong to the oldest living continuous civilizational culture in world history. And here we are now leading the way. What do you want to do in terms of, you're a barrister, you're on the road, leading these class actions? Is there an end goal? Is there something that you want to achieve before you retire? I know you're young. I don't want to work till I'm 65.
I want to retire at 60. I did want to retire at 40, but
did you? But now you go, there's too much work to do.
Now.
Too many mortgages. Listen to this fella. So what, at the moment, can you share with us, you know, for the little bits of posting that you do on LinkedIn, for the little bit of time that you got to get on there, you're leading this class action?
Yeah, so look, there's probably 5 or 6 cases I've been involved with. I did the Palm Island class action really early on as well.
So the Palm Island class action, we talk a little bit about it at Black Card.
Yeah, so that related to the death in custody of Murungi Doomadgee in 2004. And what the case looked at, it ultimately resolved for about 30... Well, we went to court and we had a trial and we won and then we settled as well. But related to the investigation of the death in 2004... and the police response. And what we said was all those things were racially discriminatory.
Yeah.
It wouldn't, the judge's words, it wouldn't happen but for the fact that it was an Aboriginal community.
Yeah.
And
what happened? For people that are listening that have no idea about the death of Murungi.
Yeah, so Murungi was walking down the street, singing a song, saw someone else being arrested. A few minutes later, he's thrown in the back of the paddy wagon himself.
And this is by Constable Hurley?
Yes. And about 30 minutes later, he's dead on the watch house floor. I've watched the video. It's pretty haunting. I don't do a lot of that stuff, but I've seen it, something that stays with you. And I can't remember the autopsy. It's been a couple of years now, but I think he might have had some broken ribs, a ruptured spleen and a portal vein cleaved in two.
Yeah.
But the coroner said it was akin to a motor vehicle accident. Such was the force.
This is the first coroner, right?
There were two there were 2 reports, and part of the investigation actually was the things that we said police told the coroner to basically, throw up all these myths.
Yes.
He was involved in a car accident. He was drinking bleach, all this stuff that we could tell was just made up on the police reports.
Of course. Can I just ask one question really quickly?
Yeah.
The senior investigator that came over from the CJC or the CMC to investigate, is it true that Constable Hurley, that was his mate?
No, it is. So, yes, part of it was the detective inspector. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
But, yes, that was one of his good friends. So that was the detective who was based on Palm.
Yes.
Can't remember his name, but yes, that's correct. So there was that.
Bit of a conflict of interest, yeah.
They had dinner that night. Apparently they didn't talk about what happened.
Oh, okay.
Because we've got all that. Chris Ronalds, who's a great barrister Silk, she did all the cross-examination on those things. So yes, that whole conflict of interest stuff's there.
Yeah.
Was never treated like a suspect, was part of our case. All these things. Picked them up, Hurley picked them up from the airport.
Yeah.
Look, it's been a few years, but these are some of the issues which we said would not have happened but for, the circumstances here. Ultimately, when the autopsy report is read out to the community on Palm Island about a week later, it just explodes, right?
Is this when Auntie Erica was the mayor?
Yeah, that's right.
Auntie Erica Kyle.
Yeah, so Erica reads out the autopsy report.
With the broken ribs and the punctured lung and the ruptured spleen,
Yeah.
like all of these full-on injuries within 30 or 40 minutes of being arrested. And that's when the whole community basically took the law in their own hands.
Well,
and
we said it was civil unrest, and we got the videos.
Yeah.
And what you see is it's not so much the whole community.
Yeah.
There is a group. Let's just say there's a core group of 20. You've been up to Palm.
Yeah.
There's probably a core group of 20, but most of them are just sitting around watching the rest of the community sit around watching at the back, like, what's going on. So there is a group that are driving there, and there's videos of that.
Mm-hmm.
Lex Watton was our main applicant, and he was successful in his claim, but he's one of the main people there. So you see all that, but in response, so Palm Island's a community where they only ever had 4 police rostered on at one time. They never wore their guns, this type of stuff. They then send in 120 odd police. 30 of those are I call SWAT, so
Riot Squad.
PSRT, Riot Squad and the CERT team. They come in, they then raid 18 homes over the next couple of days, and it's just so what the homes on Palm are like. It's not huge, but they'll surround a house. They'll then run in with their assault rifles, all full gear, women and children, rifles to their heads.
Elders.
Babies, make sure your baby doesn't move. So that was the response, just this ridiculous. And it turned into a training exercise for them because I think they just thought, well, we can do what we want, right? First time those two teams had actually worked together and anywhere. And it was so silly. One instance, they're looking for Josh Creamer. They raid a house. Oh, Josh isn't here. He might be next door. They go and raid next door. They raid 7 houses looking for this guy. He finds out they want him. He goes down the police station and says, I'm here. They raided one person, William Blackman. William's sitting in the council chambers with the mayor, Erica, and the police saying, look, what can we do to try and cool things down? The next morning they go and raid his house. With the full,
Riot Squad,
vehicles. I mean, it's just traumatising for people. We did the trial 2014-15, and this is 10, 11 years later. People were still traumatised by the events. Every witness, male, man or woman, broke down crying during their evidence 3 or 4 times. It was tough. It was tough to do because I'd spent a while working on it, right? And then ultimately the judge says, there's racism. Wouldn't have happened anywhere else. The way that the Hurley was treated, the way that police responded, all those things, the way the community was treated, all the raids. Some of the young guys there got zip-tied, bashed, and said they were going to get fed to the sharks down at this location called Wallaby Point. Wallaby Point?
Yep.
Yeah, down near
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was brutal. And it was good to get it was good result for the community.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, that Palm Island was set up as punishment island. Just during the protection era. So what I'm talking
up until the 1970s, right?
up until the 90s. People there were treated
as a penal colony.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the treatment they had was brutal. They had one of the chief protectors there who would rape all the young girls, and it's on the record, right?
Yeah.
And so to actually, for the first time, they had the strike there in the 50s. People they were sick of being fed bones and working for no money. There's been this sort of underlying resolve to try and stand up against the state and the pressure, and to actually be able to bring a case and actually, for the first time in the history of Palm Island, say, you know what, the way we've been treated by the government and the police wasn't fair, and to get that outcome was a pretty special result. But my work since then has been focused on all the historical wrongs, stolen wages, the stolen gen in the territory. I want to try and finish that while those generations are still alive. And now we've started to file cases looking at contemporary structural discrimination. So racism in child safety. We filed a case in Queensland, a class
About
action.
time. This is happening.
Yeah, New South
that
Wales.
People like child safety are being will be held accountable.
That's right. And so we look at contemporary issues, education, child safety, fishing rights is an interesting one, but basically trying to. I mean, you could look at any part of government and see structural discrimination.
Yeah.
And so we have the ability to bring these cases, try and do something. The one, for example, the medical care in Doomadgee, with the rheumatic heart disease.
Oh, my goodness. The RHD, that documentary that came out, was that an ABC Four Corners investigation?
Yeah. So we went up after that, and we've been trying to get something started up there. Community are behind it.
Of course.
So these cases,
it's all documented.
It is,
A lot of that investigative journalism that happened, with the ABC journalists that we actually got to see on TV. I want to literally just take this opportunity, big shout out to my brother Alec Doomadgee, the bush boy that Dad actually poached from Mob FM in Mount Isa, to come down to Brisbane and be the brekkie boy, on the brekkie show, the bush boy. I saw him on the documentary, and then I started to realise, well, this was Doomadgee's community.
Well, it's his family.
It's his family.
Yeah,
his own daughters and nieces. And so I heard of Doomadgee because of Alec and living with him. And then all of a sudden now he's on this documentary. So is Alec part of? Yeah,
we met with Alec and probably 20 or so family members, other families.
Yeah.
But, you talk about that area, and I always say Murrindoo is the king of the north.
Yeah, Murrindoo Yenna.
Yeah, it's like Game of Thrones. Murrindoo is the king of the north, but when you go beyond the wall, that's Noel's country.
Yes.
And so Murrindoo and Alec have been big supporters. I saw Murrindoo the other day, but we went up there just after that doco and trying to get things moving for those guys.
All right. One day you're going to have to tell me, with their permission, of course. Imagine Murrindoo Yenna on this podcast.
He'd come in.
I know he would. I wouldn't mind. I've got to get out there and actually see some of these places. You've got this.
You need to go and do some of this stuff out in the community.
I can't wait. I
saw Murrindoo the other day. I was in Mount Isa at the airport. On Friday I was out there.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to go and pack up the bag.
I do. I just go out and just take my kids out and let them see a different world as well. So tell me, your mother, you admitted your mother into... Is it the bar?
Yeah, as a lawyer. Yeah, that's right. So she went to uni she started law after I did.
Yeah.
And she finished and she applied to become, it's called you got to be admitted as a legal professional.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was a journey there. I think she'd finished uni and she didn't apply for quite a few years. It might have been close to 10 years after. But, it's a difficult process. Not everybody gets it. And she had a few false starts. But during COVID, actually, I think one of the first in-person sessions I had again, she's like, I'm going for my admission again. It's coming up this date. You're available. Yep. And it's just so ceremonial law. You basically got to stand up and you're vouching for this person. There's all this material you've got to file to make sure they're going to have the support of the Legal Practitioners Board. But we went there. Cassie Lang was there as a supporter. She got over the line. And, I jumped online. I sent a message about it. Like my mother, like I said, youngest of 12. My grandmother died when my mother was probably 6 months old from cancer.
Mm-hmm.
My mother went to grade 9 at school at Toowoomba, but because of racism, she left after grade 9. Had me when she was probably 21, and she had the two most serious relationships I remember were both filled with domestic violence.
Is that why your mum's a big advocate in that space?
Yeah, she is. So, her relationship, my stepfather, really physical. Her relationship with my other brother's father was really physical. And that coercive control type stuff. I was saying the other day that he got kidnapped. That was how the relationship ended. My youngest brother got kidnapped by his father. And so to know her story and to see her struggling, she couldn't keep the electricity on or the phone on sometimes when we're growing up, to actually go through that journey and to be admitted as a lawyer, but then all the amazing work she's done across the international human rights space, probably for almost 2 decades now, and how well she's respected out there among international Indigenous communities.
Yeah.
And COVID actually was a bit of a win for her because she wasn't travelling so much. She started to focus on doing things in Australia, and I think she's starting to be recognised for the contribution she's made here.
Wow. I literally want to yarn with you all day,
Yes.
but I know that we don't have all day.
Yeah, that's right. And you can't afford my hourly rate.
Oh, stop. Well, we could do a payment plan.
You could give me one of your houses. Just let me out your beach house. And
hey, come and stay.
I'll come up the coast
come and
with the
stay
kids.
at the Peace Retreat.
Actually, you're going up to Curramundi. I love Curramundi.
Well, can you come?
We're going up to school holidays.
Let's look, Cara, make sure we catch up.
You're so busy.
But we'll make it
can
happen.
never
You're
meet
so
up.
happy.
No, you
You're
can
so
never
happy.
meet up.
You're so busy too.
You can never.
We got to make it happen, right? Where we can just kind of, our families can hang out. I've been telling my husband, I can't believe I got Josh. Can't believe he's going to come on. I even went back through the message and I said to my husband, look what he wrote to me this morning. When you just said this random message to me and just said, what you've achieved. And I was like, try not to cry. My dad's not alive anymore. My mum's not alive. And I know that they're with me, but just somebody, and even like it doesn't have to be a family member, but somebody that can see how hard you've worked and what you're achieving or what you're contributing to society and what we're doing for our mob. We don't do what we do to get that kind of pat on the back, right? But for you to send me that message early on that morning, I'll tell you now, I'll never forget it. And I couldn't believe that I got you on the podcast because we're both in Brisbane today. I want to just ask you one more thing. What's next for you? Like, are you just going to keep on doing law till you retire? Have you got another side hustle? Is there something you and your wife are going to do? Like, what's...
Look, the most important thing for me is bringing the next generation of black lawyers through.
Yes.
My wife, Cara, and I have set up this scholarship. We've raised $200,000 to support Indigenous female lawyers coming through Griffith. I want to see more black judges. I want to see more black barristers. I want to see more black lawyers. I realise how you can really make change and influence things for that. So that's really important for me to continue doing that work and to encourage others to come on and to really drive forward in the areas that we need.
I love it because kind of your legacy is a no-brainer. What's your legacy? Well, that's the legacy piece, right? As well as these class actions and being able to, for our mob to have their days in court, which is justice, that this is justice. I don't know how much more that you could give to our mob, like to keep turning up and to hear their stories. But for you, I love the fact that you were able to say that, you're sitting down with historians, you're sitting down with knowledge holders, you're sitting down with senior law women and lawmen. What an absolute privilege to do the work that you do and to meet the people that you meet. Like, I am so inspired by sitting here and even feel privileged, and I get to yarn with you. I don't see this as an interview. I see this as, two people having a yarn. But I just want to say thank you so much. Not even just on behalf of me and coming here on the podcast, but on behalf of our community, like our people right across this country. Thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for, being deadly. I know that your mother plays a big role in raising, deadly young black man, but I don't know where our mob would be, whether it's the Palm Island case, whether it's the Queensland, our mob here in Queensland, that stolen wages case, and now we've got the mob in the NT in WA that hopefully will get their justice as well. So I just want to say thank you.
That means a lot. And I just want to say something about that message I sent. It's really important that we support each other. We recognise, the success that other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and First Nations people are achieving out there, and we get behind, and we're there for each other, because that's really important. I know, like, I've had David Williams and other really close confidants and people I can talk to support me, and I think it's important we always recognise your success, and I'm grateful for that. But still a lot of work to do, so we'll see where we end up. Wow.
Well, what an amazing way to finish up. And I know that we could literally do a few episodes here. So will you come back?
Trying to get you and me in the same room.
We will try. Hey, it might be a year away.
We might do it on the beach at Curramundi.
We might be doing it on the beach at Curramundi. but I really, I just hope that more and more people get to hear, in particular, this yarn, and everybody that does black card training literally hear about you. Like, I keep telling people, my sister Yarika, she's a deadly facilitator. Henry Nona. We've got some young, amazing apprentices coming through the ranks delivering training because the demand is there. But to keep having material and resources and these conversations that are the resources for people to go and continue their learning. So, yeah.
I'll come on and I'll do a train the trainer course with some of your people for an hour or two, and I'll just run them through some of the history. They might be able to bring it into the black card.
There you go. I love it. So there you go. Look, facilitators, Josh Creamer, we have to negotiate the hourly rate.
Oh, that's all right. Pro bono for you.
Oh, look out. This is our, what is it? Instead of our corporate and social responsibility, right? It's our cultural obligations, isn't it?
It is, yeah. No, I could do that. Look, I could slot in 2 hours and I'll do a train the trainer.
Oh, absolutely love it.
For
I told you, fellas, you are in for a treat today. Look, I don't want to take up any more time, but I just want to say thank you, and I can't wait to have you back.
Yeah, look forward to it. Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. If you'd like any more info on today's guest, please visit our show notes in the episode description. A big shout out to all you Deadly Mob and allies who continue to listen, watch and support our podcast. Your feedback means the world. You can rate and review the podcast on Apple and Spotify, or even head to our socials and YouTube channel and drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. The Black Magic Woman podcast is produced by Clint Curtis.